Hi there, and welcome to the Salted Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. And today we are going to make homemade baked beans that taste better than Bush's. Yes, I guarantee it. These are excellent and really easy to make in the Ninja Foodi. So the first thing we want to do is turn on the Ninja Foodi to the sear saute, and high is fine, so just hit the start button. And then we are going to put in 8 ounces of salt pork or thick cut bacon. And you just want them cut into little strips like I have here. That one's a little big, so I'm gonna cut that in half actually. Now, the only difference between salt pork and like a thick cut bacon is that, or the main difference anyway, I should say, is that bacon has that smoky flavor. So you could either use 8 ounces of a combination of salt pork and thick cut bacon. You could use all salt pork if you don't want that little bit of smoky flavor, or you could use all thick cut bacon. I don't recommend using thin bacon in this because you really want those thicker pieces at the end when you're ready to eat your baked beans. So what I have here is 8 ounces of a combination. I use 4 ounces of bacon and 4 ounces of salt pork. We're gonna put those into the Ninja Foodi to start to let them render and cook up a little bit. Now, the end result will not be crispy bacon because we're gonna put this under pressure, but we are gonna get them started to kind of render that fat so that we can saute our onions, our green peppers, and our jalapeno pepper. All right, so while that is heating up and starting to cook the bacon and the salt pork, we are going to add in our diced onions. Now, I dice these in a little bit larger of a dice than I usually do. This is about a half of an inch, quarter to half of an inch. And that's just because we're gonna go under a long pressure cooking time, and I didn't want them to completely disintegrate. So we're gonna go ahead and dump those in. Just give them a stir around. So while the bacon is cooking and the onions are sauteing, we're gonna go ahead and get the rest of our vegetables cut up, which is just a jalapeno pepper. Of course, this is optional. If you don't like any spice at all, then just leave this out. But it doesn't add like really strong like spiciness to the beans. It adds a ton of flavor though. So if you do like a little spice, definitely add this in. What I usually do anytime I get a jalapeno pepper is I cut off the little end and I give it a taste. Some are very spicy and some are just like kind of mild like a green pepper. This one's pretty mild, so I'm gonna go ahead and use the seeds and the whole thing. You could even add 2 jalapeno peppers if you really like spice. You could dice them up if you want, but I'm not gonna go to that trouble. I'm just going to put them into little rings and put them in the pot. I try not to touch the jalapeno pepper with my hands, especially the seeds. That gets really, really hot. And, then if you go touch your face or anything, you're going to burn yourself. So try not to touch them with my hands. Or you can wear gloves as well. Now, I just have 1 green pepper. And one thing I wanted to talk about with the vegetables, and I've tried this a couple of different ways, and so you can do it the way you want to do it, is I tried to put just half of the onion in, pressure cook for half the time, and then add the rest of the onion in after the initial pressure cooking time, and then go back under pressure, thinking that I would be able to keep more of the texture of the onion and the green pepper. And you know what, it just didn't seem to be worth it to do that, to have to stop the pressure cook and then resume it. So I've decided to put them all in it at the beginning, but you could also reserve some for the end after the pressure cooking time before we bake the baked beans. And you could add them in then if you wanted a little more crunch in your beans. All right, so I'm just gonna go around the sides here to get the flesh off of the green pepper. And then we're just gonna dice it up. Now you don't have to be too exact with this. It's not, doesn't really matter. I'm gonna dice it up about the same size as I did the onions though. Now I'm not gonna put the seeds in, but if a few fall in there, it's not gonna hurt anything. You can see I'm definitely not being exact about this at all. I remember when I owned a barbecue restaurant, we used to make beans, but we didn't make them from scratch. What we did was we used a can of baked beans, usually Bush's, the large, like number 10 cans, and then we doctored them up. And that's because, it usually takes forever to make baked beans. I mean, if you're soaking them overnight and then you're boiling them on the stove, and then it's hard to get them the right texture for baked beans. And so really it's time consuming. But with the Ninja Foodi or any Instant Pot, because you could do this in an Instant Pot as well, the time is drastically reduced. So you can have the most beautiful, wonderful tasting baked beans in about 2 hours. And of course, if you're anything like me, you like your baked beans cooked the day before, and then I like them reheated the next day. The flavor is just amazing after they sit overnight. All right, wonderful. So now all I'm going to do is saute these for about 10 to 15 minutes just to try to get some of the fat rendering off of the bacon and the salt pork. Saute these vegetables a little bit. And then we will add in our water and our beans and we'll get it under pressure. So our bacon, salt pork, onions, and jalapeno peppers and green peppers have been sauteing for about 10 minutes or so. And now I'm gonna go ahead and add in the beans. So what I have here for my bean choice is these small red beans. These are not kidney beans, they are small red beans. And they're about 6.5 ounces of the red beans, which is about a cup. And then I have a pound of the small navy beans, and that is, I think it's 2 1/3 cup, but I just bought it in a 1 pound package. I've also rinsed these beans, and the reason why you want to rinse the beans is because when they're bagged, they're not rinsed before they're put in the bags because they would mold if they were. So I just give them a quick rinse. No need to soak your beans. But if you do want to soak your beans overnight, because I know a lot of people like to do that, then you would cut the cooking time in half, I would think. I have not tested that, so I'm not positive. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and add in the beans. And we're gonna add in our seasonings. And the seasonings are very, very simple. I have 2 teaspoons of sea salt, so I'm gonna add that in. I have 3 teaspoons of onion powder. Now this is not onion salt, onion powder is what you want for this recipe. And 2 teaspoons of garlic powder. Again, not garlic salt, garlic powder. I'm just gonna mix all that around. Now you could use fresh garlic, and I usually, I prefer fresh garlic in almost all of my recipes. However, you would need a lot of garlic to get the flavor in here, probably a couple of bulbs. And you could do that, certainly, no problems. But the garlic powder works really well. And so go ahead and just use the garlic powder and save yourself some time. Now I have just some plain water, and this is 3.5 cups of water that we're gonna put in here. And I'm gonna stir this around a little bit. Get all that off there. All right, that looks good. And now we're gonna go under pressure for 60 minutes. I have made this recipe, I think about 4 times now, because I thought that I would do a 30-minute cook time like I do on beans usually. And they were completely hard. So definitely you wanna go 60 minutes, and then we're gonna do a natural release of at least 30 minutes. But usually I just let it go all the way. So we're gonna go ahead and set the valve to seal. We're gonna hit the pressure cook, high is what we want, and then we're gonna take the time to 1 hour, 60 minutes. and hit the start button. Now the pot will come up to pressure pretty quickly because it's already been heated. So once it heats that water that we added in, it will come under pressure. That'll take about 5 minutes, and then we'll let it go for 60-minute cook time, and I'll do 30 minutes at least, but probably a full pressure release for the beans. The Ninja Foodi naturally released all of its pressure, and it was about 31 minutes when the red button depressed. So we went a full natural release, but at least 30 minutes you want to do with this recipe. All right, so now I'm just going to remove this and give it a stir. Don't worry how it looks right now. It's going to be fine. It looks like, the beans are cooked really nicely. It just doesn't look like baked beans, does it? And that's because we need to get our final ingredients in. So what I have here is 1/2 cup of apple cider vinegar, 1 3/4 cup of brown sugar, and 15 ounces or just a little over 1½ cups of just regular tomato sauce. Then just give that a stir around. It looks beautiful. Absolutely wonderful. All right, so there's a couple things you can do now. You could just let this sit, put the tender crisp lid down and let it sit for a few minutes just to kind of melt that brown sugar and get the flavors throughout the baked beans. And you can serve them. I mean, these are fine. They're a fine texture and everything like that. However, baked beans, in my opinion, we might as well bake them, right? And that's what I like to do because I think that thickens them up, makes them even better, in my opinion. So I'm gonna put the tender crisp lid down. And isn't this the beauty of the Ninja Foodi? So we pressure cook and then we put our tender crisp lid down and we can do any of the other functions, bake, roast, broil. So now we're going, or air crisp. So now what we're gonna do is go to the bake roast. We're gonna take the temperature down to 325 and we're gonna take the time to 45 minutes. And we're gonna hit the start button. Now I'm gonna stir these probably every 10 to 15 minutes during this baking time. And one other thing I wanted to mention, because this might be a mistake that some of you guys make, and in fact, I made it the first time I tested the recipe. You might have noticed that I didn't add in the vinegar in the beginning, and that might seem odd. It's a thin liquid. We could use it to go under pressure with no problem. The issue is that the vinegar affects the way the baked beans cook, and they stay hard. And I found that out the hard way by trying it. So originally I added all of the ingredients in, even the tomato sauce and the brown sugar, and just went under pressure. And I could not figure out why these beans, no matter how long I pressure cooked them, they would not get tender. And it was because of the acid in both the tomato sauce and the apple cider vinegar. So definitely add those after the pressure cooking time. Even if you want to skip the bake roast period of time that we're gonna do now, that's fine. But don't add in those acid ingredients until after your beans are the texture you want, or they're not going to tenderize. We just have a few more seconds to go. I'm so excited. I cannot wait to taste these. They're perfect, let me tell you, and so simple to make. So definitely give these a try, because they are easy and they are delicious. Okay, here we go. So I've stirred them 3 or 4 times as they were cooking for the 45 minutes. Now you can see they've thickened up. We didn't have to add tomato paste or anything. I did do a test with tomato paste just to see, and I didn't like the flavor. It just gave too much of a tomatoey flavor and not enough of a baked bean flavor. So here we go. Let's put some in my little bowl here. And the reason why I did 2 different kinds of beans is because I like the way that it looks. It was more of a look thing, a little bit of a texture thing, because the red beans cook a little bit differently than the navy beans, but you could certainly use all of the navy beans. The red beans maintain a little bit more of their texture, which I happen to like. All right, let's let this cool off just a minute. Better than Bush's. Absolutely, hands down, these are the best baked beans that I've ever made. And I just can't tell you how much that jalapeno pepper adds to the flavor, because you've got the sweetness from the brown sugar, then the little bit of spiciness, and it's very little from the jalapeno pepper. The texture of the beans are perfect. The navy beans are a little bit softer than the red beans, which I happen to like. I don't know what I prefer more, if it's made with bacon or the salt pork. I don't think it matters, guys, so do whatever you want, whatever flavor you want to go for. If you want it a little bit smokier, do all of the thick cut bacon, and if you want it not smoky at all, then definitely just do the salt pork. And salt pork's a little bit cheaper too. And that's another thing, these things are very economical to make. So, and it makes 10 cups, just so you know, there's 10 cups of beans in here. So this is great if you're having a cookout. You can leave them on keep warm until you're ready to serve them. That's no problem. You can refrigerate and reheat them on like a slow saute in the Ninja Foodi. And if you want to make something really delicious to go along with it, you can make my cauliflower potato salad, and I will link to that right up there. These beans are even better than the ones that I made at the restaurant. And you know what else is just as good? I won't say better, but just as good, made in the Ninja Foodi. That's our award-winning ribs with a raspberry glaze. And I will link to those right over there.